ओम श्री गणेशाय नमः। ओम श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयम् नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयम् नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। We are in the chapter 3 of Prashnopanishad. Kaushalya, son of Ashwalayana, is putting forward a series of questions to the preceptor, sage Pippalada. From where does this prana arise? What is the source of prana? How does it enter into this body? How does it leave the body? And what are its functions while it is remaining in this body? And then how does it remain inside and outside? Is there any difference or is it the same? These are the questions. What we are going to see in this particular chapter is what is the substratum and how is it arrogating responsibilities within the body. That will be taken up in the next this session today. And then a detailed description of the Pancha Pranas and their roles will be covered from verse 5 to 7. Then the cosmic prana will be taken up in Brahmanas 8 and 9. And the question as to what happens to prana when the body is dissolved at death, and what happens to prana when there is a total dissolution at the cosmic level, that will be covered in the 10th Brahmana. And the glory of this knowledge and its effect will be discussed in Brahmanas 11 and 12. That is the brief outlay of how we will proceed. While we proceed, we will also touch upon other points which are not in the Brahmana, but it will be relevant for us to understand the context in which that Brahmana is to be studied. So we will cover that also as part of this sessions that are yet to come. Okay, next slide, please. आत्मनेश प्राणो ध्यायते यतैषा पुरुषे छायैतस्मिन् तस्मिन्नेतत्ता तत्तं मनोकृतेनायात् तस्मिन् शरीरे। आत्मन एष प्राणो जायते यथा एषा पुरुषे एषः पुरुषे छायया एतस्मिन् आततं spread out मनोकृतेन आयाति अस्मिन् शरीरं sharire actually. Atmanah is from the Atman, Eshah, this prana, Jayate is born. Where does this prana come from? From Atman, from the self, from the absolute self. Yatha, just as Purushe, on a person, Chaya, a shadow, just as a shadow is there for a Purusha, same way this prana is there for Atma. What does it mean? Prana is not real. So we are all believing that we are alive, that itself is a Mithya concept. See, this Upanishad is going to take us to some levels where our very existence is going to be questioned. But while we study the Upanishad, you must constantly remember what the Upanishad is negating is not us in absolute sense, but it is negating all that we believed incorrectly. That I am living because I am breathing is a wrong concept. Your breathing and your life principle is a superimposition on you. I existed before I was born. I am existing now. I will continue to exist even after this body comes. So, birth and death does not belong to you, is the way the Upanishad is going to unravel the truth. If somehow we can understand it, we will feel immediately at peace. The greatest fear for all human beings is death because it puts a full stop for all experiences. Even for persons who have had continuously difficult experiences, heart of heart, they think the next moment somehow magically, with the grace of God, will become good. That desire to live, to perpetuate, to explore opportunities in this world, based upon the knowledge and the experience I have gained so far, is the will and wish of everybody. All of us want to live forever. Nobody wants to say, I want to give up this body and go away. Nobody has got this taste for experiences. But what Upanishad is telling you, the so called experiences that you are now asserting for yourself as most important, are because of the belief that you have prana. And it says your prana that you're thinking, that is your so called life principle that you think you have, is like a shadow of the Atma. Shadow means what is there, is visible, but it's not real. As long as shadow is there, we will see it. But if anything happens to the shadow, we don't get upset, right? And the shadow, even if it is not there, can you say, I am not there? You don't say that also. So, by the actions of one's own mind, this so called shadowy prana enters this body. So, factor, what makes it enter this body is answered, and what is the source of prana, both are answered in this round. Let's see a little bit more deeper to find out what exactly is meant in this Brahmana. Next slide, please. The imperishable supreme truth is the reality from which this prana is manifesting itself. So prana is limited, but imperishable supreme reality is not imperishable, is not limited. It is infinite. So in that infinite reality, this prana is a superimposition. As to how it is produced, there is an illustration to explain this. In this world, a shadow will come from a man whose form of head, hands, and feet become the cause. So the appearance of the shadow and its particular form and its nature or appearance depends upon the contour of the person whose shadow it is. Definitely, a dog shadow is going to be different from a human shadow. You will never get confused that this shadow is a animal or this shadow is a human being, correct? Why? Some particular characteristic of that body on whose shadow we are looking at, a particular feature, a form, a shape is evident in the shadow. So some aspect of the person is visible in the shadow. But can you say that all aspects of the person is visible in the shadow? No, we cannot see that. For example, if I have blue eyes, I don't see blue eyes. In fact, we don't see any eyes in the shadow, correct? So all the features are not there, but some features are there. Outline is there. And sometimes if the shadow is analyzed, we can even discriminate between man, woman, animal, bird, etc. from the shadow and the original. Answering the questions one by one, the master, the preceptor, readily gives an answer to the first question, which was from where does the prana energy rise up? See, we already have studied that this energy and prana and matter are nothing but Hiranyagarbha. Prajapati is the name given in this Upanishad for that Hiranyagarbha. The total mind. You must remember, Hiranyagarbha is the name given to Brahman who is associated with total mind. So from the total mind, this prana is coming up. Total mind consists of two factors, matter and energy. And this Hiranyagarbha from which this prana has come up, the question should be from where does this mind arise? Because it is in the total mind that the concept of Hiranyagarbha is there. Therefore, when we say prana, where does it come from? We are asking, where does this mind come from? It is so easy to know that the prana that we have discussed so far came from Hiranyagarbha. That should have been the answer. But the question is not from where this prana has come from, but what is the absolute source of that from which prana also came. Now, why did the student ask the question and why is the preceptor giving such an answer? We'll have to see how we analyze the question itself in the last session. We found out that the question pertains to the Upanishadic teaching which said prana is Brahman. As we progress from Prajapati, at a point in time, we recognize that this prana is actually not just merely Prajapati, it is Brahman. So now the question is from where does this prana come? Means where did Prajapati come from? The notion that I am Prajapati, where did it arise? So for everything, there are two causes. One is known as the root cause. It is that on which it is absolutely dependent. And then there is a concept called a temporary passing cause. For example, you wearing a uniform of a policeman makes you a policeman. But you as an individual is the absolute cause, and the uniform which is worn now makes you a policeman, correct? So the uniform became a temporary cause. Your graduation will become a temporary cause. Your appointment order is a temporary cause. You, the individual, is the absolute cause. In the same way, where did this prana come from? Prana came from the absolute cause, which is Atman, the self, the Brahman, whatever name we want to call it. It is coming from Brahman or Atman or pure consciousness in us. At the individual level, you can experience it as it comes from the pure consciousness. Whenever you see a shadow, it means there is a person available who's causing that shadow, correct? That is also indirectly proved. Are we correct on that? Whenever there is a shadow, there must be a person. Otherwise, no shadow will come. So, this existence of prana is our pointer to that pure consciousness in us. At this point of time, I'm not able to discriminate between that prana and the consciousness because I did not know that I am of the nature of consciousness. So I started believing that prana is everything. It is the one which is enlivening everything and therefore it is the absolute. But prana itself is only there because of Atman. The Upanishad is making a statement saying that the prana that we think we are is actually dependent on the absolute truth in us, which is pure consciousness. Is this pure consciousness only in us? It appears to be in us because of the mind. Even that appearance is also superimposed on that absolute consciousness, which is all pervading and one alone, other than there's no second in it. So you have to visualize an infinite consciousness in which a unit of prana is visible to us in our BMI. Likewise, another unit of prana will be visible in another BMI. Both these pranas are projections. And both these projections are enlivening the respective BMIs. But what is the truth? The absolute, all pervading, one single Atman Brahman, infinite. And what is the nature of that infinite Atman? Consciousness. It is aware of itself and it is aware of everything in it also. This prana arising out of Brahman, Atman, does not mean like if a plant is coming out of a seed, actually the seed is destroyed, correct? If a plant is growing from a seed, the seed loses its seedness to become the small sapling and then finally grow into a tree, correct? So one should not get a feeling that when you say prana is coming from Atman, without this example, we'll assume that Atman is getting destroyed and prana has taken its place. And this prana spawns another Atman in the next cycle. That is how we will say this jiva is perpetuating. Each time new jiva is getting created by a previous jiva. In order to negate such misconception, the Upanishad adds a caveat that this prana is comparable to the shadow of a man, which takes its outline from the man, the hands, feet, etc., etc., but yet remains as he is. When the shadow is formed, is the man in any way reduced to a little bit of less than man? No, he remains as it is. The shadow, which is an apparent being, is actually superimposed on that Purna Purusha. Purna means complete. He doesn't become man and his shadow separate. It doesn't happen that way. Right? So this prana, when it is exhibiting its effulgence as that empowering energy in us and empowering energy in the entire cosmos, understand Brahman Atman is no way getting minimized or affected by that. If you catch on to that point, you're very close to understanding essence of Vedanta. Mere presence of Atman and Brahman is enough to create this shadowy effect of prana. Nothing else is required. Just like the shadow completely envelops the outline of a man, same way the prana is actually outlining the entire Atma in the individual. That is why we get confused that prana is Atma. That is why we start believing that if life principle ceases, I am no longer existing. What we don't understand, the life principle is superimposed on our existence. Life principle is superimposed on our consciousness. The life principle in this BMI is a superimposition on that infinite me. My nose is a superimposition on me because this nose will not exist without me. But what we do without my nose, I cannot exist, is what we believe. There are hundreds of people who have got lost their noses in some accident. Are they dead? You tell me which part of your body, if I take away, you will cease to live. Even if you take away your heart and put a heart lung machine, people are living. So, actually speaking, no part of you can claim that it is essence. On the other hand, if you did not exist, will any part of you exist at all? No. So, who is actually superimposed on whom? We have superimposed our life principle, our existence, everything on the assumption that I am this BMI. Instead, you have to turn it around and say, just like you would use a term called I am a bangled gold, you have to say, I am mega Hajrinis of Atma, or I am Madhuri of Atma. That's all. All of us are projections on that one infinite Atma, and we, in our own way, are projecting a particular unique feature of that Atma. Collectively, if I collect all the people together, we make that complete Atma. If somebody wants to know what is the nature of Atma, put all of us together into one single melting pot. That's what Atma is. Does it have a gender? No, because there 50% of us is men and 50% of us women. Are we all human beings? No, there are other species also which represents this Atman Brahman. Am I a scorpion? Yes, you are a scorpion. Am I a snake? Yes, I am a snake. Am I a fox? Yes, I am a fox. Am I this wonderful human being? Yes, you are also this wonderful human being. Can you say that only my brain is me? Legs are not me. Or some distasteful broken arm, I am not me. You cannot say that. Whether you see a terrorist or you see a Mahatma, you are both of you are only Brahman. Both the terrorist and the Mahatma are projections on Brahman depending upon the matter vestiges that compose them. Just because you see yourself in a mirror which is curved does not make you curved. So stop thinking that I am limited by my own problems, my own issues, etc. Understand your divine nature as being beyond what you are in the individual BMI. So, what use of is that for me as this individual? That's a foolish question to ask. When I'm telling you you're not the individual, again you're going back and saying, what is the use of that for me as an individual? See how our tendency will come back and anchor us back to this BMI because we always strongly believe that I'm only this BMI. What to do? Vedanta has to be studied, then only we will detach ourselves from that strong identity to being such a limited, petty, paltry being who cannot do anything. Even Vedanta study is difficult for this BMI. Give up that limitation and realize the truth. Why? Because it is the truth, nothing else. We don't want you to get convinced and believe. You must know this is the truth and be in that. Next slide, please. The problem of using the shadow example has got a problem. If I say that Brahman shadow is prana, which is what I just said a few minutes back, you'll start asking me, can Brahman have a shadow at all? And for any shadow to be caused, there must be a light source, then only a shadow is caused. Now, who is the light source for Brahman? All these questions will start coming. I'm sure all of you have been thinking at the back of the mind, therefore, I voiced it for you. Hundreds of inconvenient questions you will ask because you're caught up in the example now. Please understand the example is only a pointer to the truth, but not the absolute truth. You should not assume that prana is a shadow and Brahman is the truth, and some light shines on Brahman and therefore shadow is created. That's not the correct. Therefore, only prana is not the shadow of Brahman. Prana is like the shadow of Brahman. You have to understand it's like a shadow. Definitely, it is not a shadow. If you define it as a shadow, all kind of other questions will pop up which will confuse us. But what is it that we have to take from a shadow? Shadow does not come into existence category because it does not have a substance. A person is real, shadow is unreal. You cannot say person and shadow has got the same level of reality, right? So, and is it something that is not existing? No, it is existing because whenever we see a shadow, we know it is there. Nobody can deny that the shadow is not there when it is perceived. So, prana is perceived, therefore it exists, but it does not enjoy the same reality status as self, the Atman. It is has a dependent reality on Atman. When Atman is there, then the shadow prana is there. Otherwise, it will not be there. Whatever is experience cannot be non-existent, right? Prana is experience, so it has got existence. Nor can we say that it is existent because it is not real, meaning there is a time when prana ceases to express. So it has got something like the shadow example is to show us the mithya rupam of prana. What is mithya? It is neither existent nor non-existent. Suppose you are visualizing in your mind a person whom you like. The question, and you make up some features, such and such kind of eyes, such and kind of a nose, such and such ears, etc. Color, shape, dress, everything you can visualize in your mind. Now, if the other person asks you, you can describe this person from your mind, correct? Now, is that person existent or non-existent? He is non-existent because he is a product of your mind. But in your mind, you have made him up, therefore, he is also existent, like any other object that comes into your mind. What is it that is separating that person in your mind, which is conjured, from the real person who is evident everywhere? Nothing, because your mind is conjuring both the same way as it would do. Only thing, you imagine this person and you are telling this to other, and a real person who you may have noticed also you will communicate in the same way. There is no difference between the two. So, but we know the first one, which is a conveyance of your expression of what you think in your mind, that is mithya, meaning it was not real. But that person who is evident everywhere is Sat. Evident everywhere, always there. That is the truth. Now, Maya is mithya and prana is a product of Maya. Therefore, it is mithya. Why is Maya mithya? Because Brahman alone satyam, all others are mithya, projections. Where did we get this statement from? Shruti. Shruti means Veda. Now, in order to bring it down, prana is the representation of Atman in the individual, which is composed of Maya's effect. So, Maya's effect, when it tries to realize Brahman, it manifests as prana. Now, Maya is doing this job both at the cosmic level and also at the individual level. In the individual level, the representation is so pitiably bad, or I'll call it, very, very poor representation, that it is deluded into believing that that particular Brahman, Atman is contained in this body. And its expression as prana alone is the reality. Both these confusions come into us. That supreme Brahman is hidden from us, and a projected Brahman in the form of prana is what we believe ourselves. And for this prana, you know how much we are struggling. Corona is an example for it. How much we are struggling. We cannot give up that identity with that prana as being us. Now, Maya is defined as that which is not there. Ya, ma. Ma means negative. Sa, Maya. That is Maya. That which is not there is conjured in Brahman. That is Maya. What does it mean? That which is not Brahman is conjured in Brahman as Maya. And what is not Brahman? Name and forms. So when I conjure names and forms, then everything is superimposed on Brahman, and that effect of superimposing all that on Brahman is Maya. The power of Brahman, we call it. The ability to superimpose something that is not there on something that is real. That is Maya. Maya is a mithya concept because since it is only dealing with that which is not there, Maya itself must have the property of not being there. So Maya is a concept. It is only as real as it explains creation and the sustenance of life, etc., etc. Otherwise, in Brahman, it is not also existing. The existence of Maya is borrowed from Brahman. So, Brahmashraya Maya, meaning Brahman itself is providing the existence to Maya by itself. Its nature is providing existence. So, Maya is a concept that is believed to exist because of Brahman itself. In Brahman, Brahman alone can be, nothing else. So, this entire discussion is about that mythical Maya and its Karya effects. And one of the effects we talked about is prana. Now, prana, which is a representation of, watch my words carefully, okay? Prana is a concept which is a representation of the association of Brahman with total Rajasic aspect of Maya. And what is the total Rajasic aspect of Maya? As Panchamahabhutas, when it gets associated, then it becomes the prana at the individual level. That is a mithya. Why? The material cause for that prana is Maya. The sentient cause for prana, which is the substratum, is Brahman or Atman. The material cause for prana is the mind, which is caused from the Pancha Mahabhutas, which can go be traced back to Maya. The only reality in all of this is substratum Brahman, Atman. This has to be understood throughout every aspect of creation. Only the substratum is real. The rest are all projections which are conceived in time and space. That's all. I am real. Everything else about me is false. You cannot say I have a name. You cannot say I have features. You cannot say I have heart. You cannot say I have feelings. You cannot say I am thinking. You cannot say I'm studying Vedanta. Now we are on the edge of, are we insane or sane? Yes, we can laugh now. Actually, sanity and insanity, it's all superimposition on us. Please understand, you are absolutely real. And all qualifications that you are good, bad, ugly, terrorist, angel, nice, bad, sick, and healthy, all these are superimpositions on you. Not only what you think, everybody who's thinking around you about themselves, everything is a superimposition on you because you are the absolute truth on which all this is mere superimposition. Now, one superimposition interacts with another superimposition. मुझे क्या देना है? What do I do about it? Right? I am talking to all of you is a superimposition. See how wonderful this superimposition is working. And what is the reality underneath that? Atman Brahman, me, I. Some of these superimpositions are helping us recognize this truth. That is Vedanta. Some of these superimpositions are reinforcing our individual identity. That is not Vedanta. That is Vyavahara. So, in this earlier chapter, we saw the two paths, that activity and knowledge, which makes you recognize this truth that everything else is a superimposition, is called Uttarayana. And that which actually buries you deeper and deeper into your own existence as matter restitute, that becomes Dakshinayana, and that is the path of perpetuation of this Deva. Next slide, please. Let's look at it diagrammatically to get the point home. Only Brahman exists, nothing else is there. And then, as though it had a will, Brahman became Ishvara along with its power known as Maya, the ability to create things which are not there, the ability to project things. Because when you say it is not there, it can only be projected. If it is there, it will be created. If it is not there, it can only be projected. An oasis is not there in a desert, in a mirage. So it has to be projected only to recognize that it is an oasis, correct? This projecting power of that which is not there is called the power of Maya. So Brahman as though became two, still contained in one, Brahman and its power. The moment it's recognized that it has the power to project or create or to conjure things which are not there, Brahman became Ishvara. Because one who has got power has got lordship over the power. So the term Ishvara means one who is the lord of Maya. And the moment this power was wielded, then it recognized that the power itself has got three aspects: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Associated with the sattvic aspect of this power, which is the creative potential, that Ishvara, which we saw as none other than Brahman, became as though a Saguna Brahman. That is, the Ishvara is the name for Brahman associated with Saguna aspect of Maya, sattvic aspect of Maya. Now you see that one became two. What is the two things? The power to create, the potential energy to create, and the lordship over that potential energy. The moment you start wielding a position, automatically you and the position become two different things, correct? As long as I conceive of a position in my mind, there's no problem. But the moment I create a position, then I become an occupier of that position. So some verb has to be introduced between them. As long as something is part of you, no verbs are required. I and myself, we don't say I am myself because we know they are one and the same. But if I say I and my wife, I have to say we were married. So the verb here is association and wielding. Then we call this Ishvara as one who wields the sattvic Maya and associates with that wielding. Then he becomes Ishvara, the creator. Same Ishvara, the creator, became Hiranyagarbha, Prajapati, or Prana. That is the name given to this Ishvara who has started creating, right? But now he is associated with the Rajasic aspect of Maya and therefore associates and energizes this entire creation into what we call as a total mind. Then the same Ishvara became Virat or Rai, as this Upanishad calls out, is the name for Ishvara when associated with the tamasic aspect of Maya, and he associates and energizes that tamasic aspect. Then he becomes Virat or Rai. So when we said Prajapati becomes Prana and Rai, this is what is meant there to be understood. And at the individual level, the same Hiranyagarbha becomes prana at the individual level, energizes the BMI, which is the Pancha Mahabhutas, which is a product of the tamasic aspect of Maya. So, tamas predominant Maya creates in it a sattvic aspect called mind. In that mind, this prana energizes it to create the functions of a body, mind, and individual intellect at the individual level. So, what should we remember in all of this? All on the left hand side are names given to Brahman under various contexts of an imaginary power called Maya, which is manifesting itself in so many ways. So the play of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas became the Pancha Mahabhutas, and the Pancha Mahabhutas interacted, became solid, solidified into the body. And then the subtle form became mind, and so even subtler became intellect, and the Rajasic aspect became prana. All this is superimposed on Brahman. This is a science. And in Vyavahara, we have Chandru Sharma, I have Ram Mohan, I have Krishnan Vaidyanathan, I have Anusha, each one totally different from each other. And what aspect of it are we different? The material aspect. And what is the material aspect? Yama sa Maya. That non-existent Maya has projected these differences in all of us. Identified with these differences, we became Jiva. So Chandru Sharma is a Jiva, Ram Mohan is a Jiva, Pradeep is a Jiva. Geoff is another Jiva, yes. And who is this Jiva? Is Brahman identified with that particular matter projection known as the BMI of Chandru Sharma, BMI of Geoff, BMI of Megha, so on so. And this identification is energizing that particular BMI to morph continuously in different ways. The moment I have identified, now I'm driving that BMI amongst the other BMIs in a way. It's almost like all of us are driving in our own cars. Each one is driving our car in our own way. Somebody tries to overtake each other, somebody hits the other one. All this is happening in this world. Why? Because we think we are contained in that car and that our driving in the car is the most important thing in our life. I'm not worried about other cars. And so we bump into each other, we rub into each other because no car in this world I've seen is without a scratch. Right? That shows how we lead our lives. We always scratch each other one way or the other and destroy somebody's car. As long as our insurance covers our car, we don't mind. We drive even more ration than before. And this is what we are doing with our BMI. We are destroying ourselves and also all the BMIs around us. Because that's the only thing we can do with BMI. If you want to really recognize that oneness, you have to go to the root, recognize that your BMI is a projection on Brahman. The other BMI is also a projection on Brahman, which is you. Once you recognize that, then the interaction between the two BMIs will become normalized. Otherwise, it will always be abnormal reactions. Give up the jiva hood and gain that supreme nature of yourself as an all encompassing entity on which various projections are there. They have to harmoniously interact with each other, not rub each other and destroy each other. Discipline is required in our transactions. But my car is already damaged so much. What should I do now? To the best of the ability that is available, don't worry about what went wrong. Recognize that you as a driver are the same as the driver in the other car. Respect as best as possible given the circumstances. If your car has become a dabba car, doesn't matter. Do whatever you can because the purpose of how you drive is more important than the quality of your car. So do not now start worrying about, oh God, I messed up my BMI. Don't worry. It has happened. Don't worry about that. Do what best you can do. That decides how good a driver you are, not the car. If you start depending that the car dictates me, then you're back into your own matter vestige. Don't allow your BMI to dictate your life. Allow your life, which is Brahman, to dictate what the BMI can do under the circumstances. Age no bar, gender no bar, quality of mind no bar, intellect no bar. If you don't have a perfect intellect, take to bhakti. If you don't have a perfect intellect and body, take to karma yoga. If you have a perfect intellect, please continue Vedanta more intensely. These are the ways we can change. Instead of saying that that's not okay, this is not okay, live a life as full as possible given the constraint. And what is full life? Continuously park yourself as Brahman, not as the Jiva. That's all. Recognize that you are the Brahman of everybody around you. Everybody and everything, both animate and inanimate. Start respecting everything because they are all Brahman only, on which a projection is visible to you. Next slide, please. See, the property of a shadow depends on the person's outline and the surface on which it falls, right? See, on the right hand side, if you see, the person's shadow is on a wall and the floor. So the shadow looks bent, even though the person is not bent. Similarly, there are some things in the person which is not reflected in the shadow because of the quality of the resolution of the shadow. Correct? So when you now look for this Brahman in your prana, these two problems will come. When you look for Brahman in your mind, you will have these two problems. When you look for Brahman in your intellect, you will have these two problems. When you look at Brahman in your body, you will have these two problems. What will happen? The body is bent, so you'll assume Brahman is bent. So a crooked body will have a crooked Brahman, Atma. This is the belief. A crooked mind will have a crooked Atma, belief. And my mind is always constrained with limited thinking, so I'll assume Atma itself has got limited thinking. Why? I'm mistaking the shadow to be the full representation of the reality. So some amount of analysis is required to recognize the limitations of the shadow and work around it to understand what the person I am. If you want to recognize that you are absolute truth, you'll have to work around your own mind and intellect. Each one's mind and intellect is different. So what works for Chandru Sharma will not work for me because his mind and intellect is perfectly tuned to his BMI. My mind and intellect is tuned towards my samskaras. And both of us, when we meet, you have to be very careful in trying to follow what we are looking at on the same subject of Vedanta. That is why Mahatmas are differing in schools of philosophy, and so many schools of Vedanta are there because of that. And once you recognize that the difference is because of a matter restitute or a language or a constraint of the BMI of the individual Mahatmas, you will recognize that everybody is talking about the same truth, but in their own way. That's all. Now you'll be at peace to accept Dvaita, Advaita. The height of it is accepting a terrorist and a Mahatma as one and the same. That will be the height. And when we come there, then your own tests will acid test it is. So because how can I accept terrorist? That person killed so many people. That means you're still at the BMI level. Please understand that. You're not saying that he is to be condoned for his terrorism, but recognize that he is actually Atma on which a particular BMI was constrained to become a terrorist. The BMI is a terrorist, Atma is you. So, due to resolution or some factors which are hidden, color, etc., we cannot see in a shadow, there will be some limitation in expression of this Atma in the various VMIs. Prana being a product of Brahman and total mind at the cosmic level, and Atman, which is Brahman at the individual level, just a name, and the individual mind at the microscopic level appears different. And it is different from the Atma or Brahman in each of these levels. For the same reason, there is difference between the shadow and the person, real person. Because the ability of the shadow is constrained by the material on which the shadow is cast. A shadow on a gutter will look guttery. A shadow on a mirror kept in your puja room will look almost divine. But does not matter. They are both shadows. They are representation of the absolute truth, which is blemishless. This adhyastha, that is the substratum cause for this prana is Atman, without which it cannot be. But it has got a limiting adjunct in the mind, which becomes its instrumental cause, and that is called its entry into this body. That prana, by the mind becoming an instrument, has constrained itself into entering into this body, as though, not real. Because the source of this body is Maya, which is as though only. So we are conjecturing this entry of the prana into the body. Body is the instrumental cause. In that, mind is the main cause for which prana comes into the body. See, Brahman as Ishvara created the total mind. And then he became Hiranyagarbha and associated with the total mind and split that mind into prana and rai, that which is sentient and that which is inert. And as Jiva becomes the prana in the mind, which is a microscopic, and the individual mind, which consists of thoughts and desires, is energized by this prana. So, entry of prana is because you have thoughts and desires in the mind. Otherwise, it is not constrained. It is still similar to the prana and rai, which is at the cosmic level. We'll see a little bit more about this as we go down the line. Next slide will become clear. Question to you. Click once, please. The famous question that I posted. Two of you were bold enough to venture. Others, they all like to sit back and let others fight all these battles. Why we will get the answer in the class. Okay, no problem. So if you say that container is in space, then one will get a confusion. What about the space outside? And if you say that space is in container, I'm sorry, if you say space is in container, what about outside space? And if you say container is in space, then what about the space inside the container? Is it contained or not contained? Right? So click once more. Let's see both the options, see what to analyze. If the answer is A, then the space in the container is contained inside. So it cannot be the same as the space outside, correct? And we know space is space. It doesn't matter whether it's inside or outside, it's got the same properties. So this answer, even though it looks all right, it has got a flaw. Click once more. If you say that the answer is B, then what is the difference between space outside and space inside? And also there is some space between the molecules which made up this container. So there is an all-pervasive space in which these molecules are sitting, which we call it as a container. So maybe answer B is correct, is wrong. Or maybe answer is A is. So this is actually a paradox. You can neither say that this is contained in this or that is contained in this because they don't belong to the same level of grossness. One is subtler, another is grosser. Become clear. Next slide. Click once more, please. With respect to the reality of the container as a limiting agent, inner space is contained. So if you take from a transactional perspective that there is a reality called containment by the container, then naturally the term space is contained becomes valid. Otherwise, it will not be valid. So this containment is only with respect to how you treat that material which makes up the container. With respect to space as the real factor in the consideration, the container is contained in space. With respect to space, you will say The container is in space, and with respect to the container, you'll say space is contained. So when we say contained or contained and all these terms, they all have a relative meaning. There's no absolute meaning for them. And all our English language contains many such terms which have got only relative meaning, but we have taken them to be absolute. That is where our problem is. Many such words are there. Like I told you, no, bangled gold became gold bangle. So we say golden bangle, even further. But bangle does not have an independent existence without the gold. So we have misused English language to convert adjective into noun and noun into adjective, and we suffer because of that. Next click, please. In absolute sense, since they belong to different realms, that is subtle space realm and gauss container realm, neither of them is contained. Containment is a mere thought superimposition in our mind. Right? You must nod and say yes. Oh, so difficult to say yes to this. This is the truth. Containment is just a concept in our mind. It has got no absolute reality. Next clip, please. Since we know through science that subtle pervades the gross, we know subtle things will pervade through the gross, correct? Like if you pour water in sand, it will percolate through the sand, correct? So subtle water pervades the gross sand, and science says this is possible. So container is in space is the truth, though it cannot be realized in either of the realms by themselves, but serves to resolve this paradox when realms intermix. Here, see, when you have intermixing realms, you have to use something which is superior to both of them to understand the effect. Otherwise, in either of the realms, you will be confused. In Brahman, prana does not exist. And in prana, Brahman does not exist. Because they belong to two different realms. Now, next click will make it clear what we are trying to arrive in this example. To say prana is contained in the body or BMI is contained in prana, both are not true. However, prana being subtler and pervasive, BMI is in prana is the truth only when we are witnessing both. When we only see the subtler Brahman as ourself, BMI does not exist since it is a mere projection, just as prana also was. To bring home this point, all this example I had to take and walk you through. Otherwise, it won't ring. Even when I told you prana is mithya, all of you nodded, but you are not convinced because you still think I am prana only, no? And how will that which thinks it is true will believe that it is false? It will never accept. So while you nodded, you nodded out of reverence to Vedanta. That's all. Not really. Heart of heart, you wanted to close this session, go back and continue to live as prana. But I'm trying to bring your attention to the fact that at the realm where we are saying that it is mithya is because of a different realm of our understanding. As long as you're in Vyavahara, please treat prana as real. Don't try to shut off, close your nose and say, I'm going to put an end to prana because I want to destroy this myth. No, that's wrong. In Vyavahara, prana has to be respected. Give whatever dharma it is to be done, respect. In Vyavahara, do whatever is required, but understand the reality to resolve the issue in merging prana and BMI as mere projections. You have to understand it in a different perspective. That's all. Click once more, please. See, at the individual level, prana is that which is known as I notion in us. We call it ahankara in Sanskrit, ego in English. Our prana that is expressing is given the name ego because the I thought in us is actually the prana. The I thought is the mind's concept of Atma. And depending upon the nature of our mind, this I thought will take various shapes. This notion, this I thought, is a constant thought in the mind, and it associates itself with all thoughts and other thoughts and desires that are there in our mind. So, whenever we have thoughts in our mind, we say, I know it. What we really mean is associating the I thought with the other thoughts. That is when we say, I know it. As long as thoughts and desires are there, the I notion is perceived and continues to express. Okay. When thoughts and desire become unmanifest, like in deep sleep, the I notion also becomes unmanifest. Nobody has got any ego in deep sleep. All beings are uniformly egoless in deep sleep. Since I notion is a thought, even though constantly there almost, it is colored by our mind. Thus, thoughts and desires of the mind uphold it and gives it a form while its substratum is Atman. Go back to your shadow example. And this is what I meant when I showed you a picture of a person meditating, a person active, and a person sleeping. The person is the same, but he is going through three different experiences, and therefore he appears different. Same way, this prana, which is the I notion in your mind, is going through variations depending upon the nature of your mind, whereas its substratum Atman is constantly there as one and the same. Manokrutena ayati asmin sharire. It does enter the body because driven by our thoughts and desires, we perform actions expecting results. And in order for us to beget these results, prana also resides in the body as ahankara. That is how the prana gets connected as ahankara because we are expecting results and these results have to be experienced by somebody, right? That mind's notion of who that experiencer is called ahankara. It is actions that result from our thoughts and desires which forces this prana to manifest as I notion and remain in the body. This ahankara is created in the body just to limit its experience to whatever this body is experiencing. If we give up ahankara, we will become the total Hiranyagarbha himself, which means everybody's experience is mine. Which means if somebody is crying, somebody else is laughing, I can still laugh. I remember, my mom who had four children. I have three more siblings with me. She would always come and complain to me that one daughter phones and says, my grandchild has failed an exam. At the same moment, another daughter phones and says, my grandchild has scored first rank in the school. The mother, should she cry or be happy? She would tell me it's a very difficult position to be in. She says, one hand I will say yes, yes, very bad, and another hand I have to say very good, you did very well. Same person is doing both functions. Like that, when you become the cosmic mind, will you suffer because the terrorist blew up somebody, or you will be happy because the Mahatma gave a wonderful sermon of Vedanta to many people and liberated them? What will you do? You will say, yes, terrorist has to be or should be punished. All that you will speak, and you will also say, Mahatma, you've done a great job because you are one and the same in everybody. That is what is meant in here. When you said that you are projecting yourself as individual ahankara, you understand that you are the cosmic mind in which all these individual minds are portraying differently. It's almost like you yourself having good thoughts and bad thoughts at the same time. You just ignore the bad thought, try to control it, and get rid of it. That's all you will do if you can. It is It is therefore I notion is manifested in us because we want to experience the result of our past actions. A better way to understand is to realize that prana connects the BMI to Atman through the mind. In essence, prana is Brahman, and now, due to association with karma and karma phala, has become the ego limited in the mind. Now, a broken mirror reflects you in many, many pieces. So, if I have a divided mind, individual minds, that Atman, which is supreme, reflects in so many pieces. One has got only eyes, no legs. Another has got only legs, no eyes. Like that, we are. Only when we recognize through that limited pointer that we have in our mind, our true nature, we will never get to know that I am not this reflection. I am the absolute truth, which is the substratum for this reflection. In this limited BMI is what we should understand. Next click, please.